This room is just full of the best people, and it's difficult to identify individuals and point out why they're so important. But I would like just to start by acknowledging Paul Polman to you. I can't quite do it in the same way that he did it to me, but I instead just will tell you that once I was stranded in Western Switzerland, and Paul was there, and he gave me a lift in his car, and we spent 6 hours together through a most extraordinary snowstorm when cars were sliding all over the place. I didn't notice much of that. I just had such a lot that I learnt. And I learnt mostly that one of the things that really drives Paul, besides running marathons, is a trust that he is involved in the Kilimanjaro Blind Trust, which for him is one of his most extraordinary contributions. And I think that it was hearing him talk about the work that he has done with blind people in East Africa made me understand what a great human being he is. And it's a privilege, Paul, that you are taking the cause of nutrition so seriously as a person, through your company, through your work with major groups like the World Economic Forum, for your work with the B20, for your work in the Secretary General's high-level expert panel, for your work on transformative partnerships for the Global Compact, for your work with Conservation International, and numerous other things that you have done, do, and will continue to do. I'd like to clap you. I hope you won't mind. I'd also like to acknowledge some very important people who are here. They're sitting in the back. Wilbald Laurie, are you here? Could you stand up? This is Dr. Wilbald Laurie, representing President Kikwete of Tanzania, member of the Sun Lead Group. Wilbald, thank you for being here. I hope also Terry Wafwafa, you won't mind. Are you sitting there? Do you mind standing up? Terry Wafwafa, who is the Scale-Up Nutrition Focal Point from Kenya, and Kenya's work on Sun has been extraordinary. We're hoping also that Edith and Tete from Ghana, Chris Okapunwi from Nigeria, and colleagues from Bangladesh will be here. Maybe they're in the room now. If they are, great. Yeah, where? Hey! Thank you for dressing in such an incredibly unnoticeable way. That's really lovely to see you here. I hope that the journey was okay. I was very sorry to hear of some other news from Nigeria this morning, which is a great cause of concern to me. I think I'd like to just say to all of you that we have members of the Scale Up Nutrition Movement Lead Group in the room. We have members representing governments that are involved in supporting Scale Up Nutrition. But perhaps I'd really like to pick on Joe Costello, the Minister of Foreign Affairs from Ireland. Do you know that the contribution of the people of Ireland to the effort, the global effort on reducing hunger and improving nutrition per head of population, in my judgment, is greater than any other country in the world? And it is stunning, the consistency with which Ireland is supporting this effort. We'll get a chance to applaud you, Joe, when you speak. But what a man you are, and thank you for the leadership of the government and people of Ireland. Thank you, Tom Arnold, also representing the people of Ireland through your work chairing the Constitutional Commission. It's really great that you're here with us as well. Ireland is strongly represented in the movement. So the movement is a collective effort. It brings together governments, hundreds of organizations, thousands of individuals who simply want to end hunger and undernutrition in all its forms. It's self-organizing. It's not an organization in its own right. It's a group of people who've decided to organize themselves. It's not an institution. It's not a fund. It's not a program. But it is a collection of people who are working together for one set of outcomes. and at its heart are 33 countries that in the last 2 years have come together to support the effort. They are home to almost 60 million undernourished children, 1/3 of the global total. And it is the countries, their governments, their people, their institutions that are at the centre of the movement to scale up nutrition. And that is so important and so central to all we're doing, because it means the rest of us, whether we're in the United Nations or in international civil society or in business or in research or part of the donor community, we are committed to doing one thing only, and that is to support the countries as they take forward their efforts to achieve their targets. We're supporting countries as they establish multi-stakeholder platforms for action on nutrition, putting in place the necessary policy and legal frameworks and aligning frameworks around aligning stakeholders around common frameworks to get all of development sensitive to nutrition and to get the kind of outcomes that we all want. We're supporting them as they mobilize more resources and as they demonstrate their results. There are people in this room who have shown how agriculture can be made more sensitive to nutrition, particularly Gordon Conway, who's sitting in front of me and who'll be with us tomorrow. Thank you for your leadership on bringing together the different agricultural actors so that they will contribute to nutritional outcomes. Now, sometimes we refer to the bottom of the pyramid as being the people who we most concentrate on. As we look at the Sun movement, we see that actually the people who are at the centre of our work are actually some of the poorest people in the world, who are in a way also the most efficient and the most resilient in what they're able to do with very, very limited resources at their disposal. Sometimes I think we should refer to them as being at the top of the pyramid because they're so extraordinarily efficient and effective and trying to do amazing things in terms of organising their children's well-being and their own well-being despite living under extremely difficult circumstances. And the Sun movement is working for the hundreds of millions of people who are at risk of undernutrition. What we're already seeing is that 12 countries within the movement are reducing their rate of chronic undernutrition at more than 2% a year, which is moving towards the World Health Organization's recommended target for reduction in undernutrition of just over 3.5%. This is already a very positive sign. 12 countries are moving, and we will see more and more countries demonstrating this progress as they organise their efforts around targets for improving nutrition. The movement's being helped because internationally it's gaining a higher profile. There was the Olympic Hunger event in August this year, organised by Britain and Brazil, which showed how much high-level support there is for action to lead to better nutrition outcomes, and perhaps paved the way for what we're going to see in June 2013, what's called the pre-G8 meeting on hunger, food and nutrition, being organised by the UK government together with others within the G8 framework. But there are other events coming up in 2013, particularly during the Irish presidency of the European Union, also events to do with the post-2015 agenda organised by Spain and Colombia, and events to do with nutrition outcomes organised by the World Health Organization and the Food and Agriculture Organization with a big international conference in November. Take these events together, and 2013 will be the year that nutrition came to life. Think of those words, the year that nutrition came to life. And I believe that we're going to see nutrition being transformed as an issue as a result of the efforts of the Sun countries and of all these different global efforts. Today is an example of how groups within the Sun movement, development partners, civil society, business, and the United Nations system are organising themselves to take responsibility. It's the launch of the Sun Business Network and the creation of its system of governance. You've heard already from others about the business case for investing in nutrition. You've heard why businesses want to participate in this great effort to improve nutrition. So let's think for a minute or two about why the movement needs business. And I feel that's my job, is to reach out to you and say, we need you in the center of the movement, because good nutrition is determined by diet, by health, and by the time and autonomy available, particularly to women, caring for themselves and caring for their children. And business can help ensure that people can access the right diet, can sustain good health, and also that women can have time and autonomy, whether it is for breastfeeding or for providing complementary foods to their children, or ensuring that they're adequately fed during pregnancy. It is quite unreasonable for there to be a continued perception that somehow business is working against the interests of good nutrition, that somehow business is working against women being able to breastfeed their children properly, that business is working against complementary feeding in the early years of life. That, however, is a perception among certain groups. And I would like the Sun Business Network to set itself right from the start the goal of showing the world that business is absolutely not in that space that it's sometimes identified as being at, but instead is totally committed to empowered women being able to enjoy good nutrition during pregnancy, to have full opportunities to breastfeed their children, to have the opportunities to provide complementary source foods to their children, and to be in a position to ensure good nutritional outcomes through accessing clean water, sanitation, and having time and autonomy to do this. And that means in some cases perhaps finding ways for women business people to be able to be supported by your companies so that they can be role models for others and show that business is pro-women and pro-nutrition at all phases of life. Let's try to make sure that every single business everywhere is committed not just to inclusive breastfeeding in the first 6 months of life, but continued breastfeeding along with appropriate complementary feeds for up to 2 years and beyond. Let's see it spelt out in every single piece of appropriate publicity that you're involved in, that this is where you stand, and you're not into anything else except for these outcomes, so that nobody can possibly question your motives. And do make yourselves open to audit at all times, so that these issues can be made clear, so that we can move away from what I consider to be the dark age in which nutrition companies, food companies, companies interested in nutrition have sometimes felt that they can't come into this space because it gives them a serious reputational risk. And do continue to work on water supply, hygiene and sanitation, because dirty drinking water, open defecation, chronic diarrhea contribute to undernutrition in children. This is part of the agenda, and many of your companies can work in this area. The Unilever, Lifebuoy and Domestos campaigns are very good examples of this. If you're into IT, if you're into communication, if you're into any part of marketing, you can use communications tools to be able to improve nutrition. For example, the rapid SMS system being used in Malawi, providing an instant feedback loop that health workers and governments can use. Let's make certain that all companies and all businesses and all their processes are part of this movement. Help us to develop principles of engagement within the movement that enable all to participate together with mutual respect and accountability. Help us to find ways to make sure that conflicts of interest don't occur, or if they do occur, that we can deal with them immediately. And help us to make certain that your ABC strategy that's been circulated today can be brought to life, and that business can play the role that it must play in better nutritional outcomes and empowered societies, and people being able to enjoy their right to food and nutrition, which is what I know you all stand for. I salute you all. Thank you very much for coming together today. Thank you for launching the Business Network. Thank you for this evening.